What if the greatest enemy was never outside the castle walls but hiding inside them all along? A forgotten secret passage has been opened, a little boy has vanished without a trace, and the Alpha King's sacred guardian has just led the king and Alya into the darkness beneath frost. Keep. What they are about to discover will expose a betrayal buried for generations and change the fate of the kingdom forever. The wind screamed across the frozen Blackwater River long before anyone saw what was coming. The snow swirled through the air like restless spirits twisting between the ancient pine trees while a deep silence settled over the forgotten valley. The villagers had learned to fear that silence because it always arrived before something terrible happened. Doors slammed shut, children were pulled inside, mothers whispered old prayers that had been passed down for generations. Even the dogs stopped barking, as if nature itself had decided not to disturb whatever waited beyond the river. Then it came. A single roar rolled through the mountains, so deep and powerful that it seemed to shake the frozen earth beneath every trembling foot. It was not the howl of an ordinary wolf, it was older than memory and heavier than thunder. Birds exploded from the trees in frightened clouds, while loose snow slid from rocky cliffs far above. An old man standing near the village well slowly lifted his frightened eyes toward the dark forest. "It has returned," he whispered. No one answered because no one wanted to give life to the fear already growing inside every heart. Far from the frightened crowd, a young woman stood alone beside a weathered wooden cabin at the very edge of the village. Her name was Alya, and unlike everyone else, she did not run inside. She simply watched the forest with calm grey eyes that carried far more sadness than fear. The icy wind pulled strands of her silver-brown hair across her face, but she never looked away. For years the village had blamed her for every strange thing that happened: crops that failed, sick animals, missing hunters, endless storms. Every misfortune somehow became her fault. They called her cursed. Some believed darkness followed wherever she walked, others claimed the night itself protected her. Alya had stopped defending herself long ago. Loneliness had become quieter than arguments. Her tiny cabin stood apart from every other home, as though even the buildings wished to avoid her. The roof leaked during heavy snow, the walls groaned whenever winter storms arrived, yet somehow it remained her only place in the world. She reached down and picked up another piece of firewood before quietly stacking it beside the door. The roar echoed again. Closer this time. Her eyes narrowed. That was not the sound she feared. Something else was moving beneath it. Soft. Careful. Watching. She slowly turned toward the endless wall of dark pine trees surrounding the village. "Someone is there," she whispered to herself. Just then the distant sound of horses shattered the frozen silence. Several armored riders appeared through the snowfall. Their cloaks carried the silver crest of the Northern Kingdom. Every villager immediately recognized them as royal scouts sent by the Alpha King. Children peeked through windows while nervous men gathered in the village square. The captain climbed down from his horse. His armor was scratched by weeks of travel and exhaustion covered his face. "We are searching for signs of enemy movement," he announced loudly. "Has anyone seen strangers crossing these lands?" The villagers quickly shook their heads. Nobody wanted trouble. Nobody wanted war. Before anyone else could speak, Alya quietly stepped forward. "You should leave before sunset," she said. Several villagers immediately groaned. "Not her again," one woman muttered. The captain looked at Alya with clear annoyance. "And why should we leave?" "Because something is already here," Alya answered calmly. "Not soldiers. Not wolves. Something that has been watching this village since yesterday." The captain laughed. "Watching us? From where?" Alya slowly raised one finger toward the silent forest. "From there." The soldiers exchanged amused smiles. One younger scout chuckled. "Perhaps the cursed girl has been speaking with ghosts again." Laughter spread through the crowd. Only Alya remained silent. The wind suddenly stopped. Every tree became perfectly still. Even the horses shifted nervously. Then one of the scouts noticed something lying just beyond the edge of the snow-covered road. "Captain." His voice no longer carried laughter. The captain walked forward. His confident expression disappeared instantly. Pressed deeply into the untouched snow was an enormous footprint. Then another. Then another. Each one was wider than a man's chest. The claw marks dug frighteningly deep into the frozen earth. No ordinary wolf could leave tracks like these. One nervous soldier swallowed hard. "That is impossible." The captain slowly knelt beside the nearest print. "Fresh. Very fresh." The villagers stepped backward together. Fear spread through the square without anyone saying another word. An elderly woman crossed herself while whispering the oldest legend the village had ever known. The Alpha King's beast. The captain immediately stood. Everyone back inside. Now. People rushed toward their homes. Children cried. Doors slammed shut across the village. Within moments only Alya remained standing outside. The captain looked directly at her. If that beast truly came from beyond the Blackwater River, then we have nothing to fear. He forced confidence into his voice. It cannot cross the river. It never has. It never will. The other scouts quickly repeated his words as though saying them aloud made them true. The Alpha King's beast will never cross the river. Alya looked toward the distant frozen water where pale mist floated above the surface. For reasons she could not explain, her heart suddenly felt strangely heavy. Almost as if the river itself were listening. As darkness slowly covered the valley, the first shadows began moving between the trees. Not wolves. Not people. Shapes made entirely of darkness. And they were walking toward the village. Darkness swallowed the village one breath at a time as the strange shadow figures slipped silently between the snow-covered trees. They did not run, they did not roar, they simply moved forward with slow, terrifying purpose like living nightmares born from the winter night. Their forms shifted with every step. Sometimes they looked like wolves, sometimes they looked almost human, then they melted back into darkness before anyone could truly see them. Inside the wooden homes, frightened families held one another. While candle flames trembled against the icy wind creeping through the cracks in the walls, no one dared speak above a whisper. Every heartbeat sounded louder than the storm outside. Alya remained standing near the edge of the village. Her breathing stayed calm, although every instinct inside her warned that this night would change everything. The royal captain drew his sword as the remaining scouts formed a defensive line behind him, their horses stamped nervously against the frozen ground, refusing to face the approaching forest. "Stay together," the captain ordered. "Do not chase anything into the trees." The shadows reached the first abandoned barn. Without warning, one of the creatures rushed forward with impossible speed. A soldier barely raised his shield before the force threw him across the snow. His weapon disappeared into the darkness while terrified cries echoed through the village. Another shadow slipped across the rooftops as though gravity held no power over it. The captain swung his sword but struck nothing except empty air. "What are these things?" one scout shouted. No one answered because no one knew. Alya watched every movement carefully. These creatures were not hunting food. They were searching for someone. Her eyes slowly drifted across the frightened faces gathered behind the barricades. Then she saw him. A small boy no older than 7 stood frozen with fear beside the old bridge leading toward the Blackwater River. His parents had died during the harsh winter months, and since then he had lived from one neighbor to another, never truly belonging anywhere. His name was Rowan. In the confusion, no one had noticed that he was missing. Alya called his name, but the wind carried her voice away. At that same moment, one of the shadow creatures turned toward the frightened child. Its glowing eyes fixed on him. Then it charged. Rowan screamed. Without thinking, Alya ran. Snow flew beneath her boots as she crossed the village faster than anyone believed possible. The captain reached out toward her. "Up. Do not go near the river." She never slowed. Rowan stumbled backward onto the frozen bank, his small hands shaking as the dark creature closed the distance between them. Alya reached him only seconds before the shadow attacked. She pulled the frightened boy into her arms and turned toward the Blackwater River. The ancient water stretched before them, covered by a thin layer of ice that reflected the pale moonlight. Behind her, the captain shouted again, "Do not cross. The Alpha King's beast cannot pass those waters. The river protects us." But Alya no longer trusted old stories. She trusted only what stood before her. Holding Rowan tightly, she stepped onto the frozen river. The ice cracked beneath her feet. The freezing water soaked through her boots. Each step felt like walking into death itself. Behind her, the shadow creatures suddenly stopped. They refused to step onto the sacred river. For one brief moment, hope returned. Then another sound echoed across the valley. A deep, powerful growl unlike anything the villagers had ever heard. The forest itself seemed to bow before it. Every shadow creature lowered its head. The captain slowly turned toward the opposite shore. his face drained of all color. Emerging from the darkness came an enormous wolf unlike any living creature. Its silver-black fur shimmered beneath the moonlight like flowing metal. Golden eyes burned with quiet intelligence rather than savage hunger. Every step carried impossible strength. The air itself seemed heavier around it. No soldier lifted a weapon. No horse dared move. The ancient guardian had appeared. The Alpha King's beast. The captain whispered the words almost without breathing. It will stop. Has to stop. It has never crossed. The great beast reached the riverbank. Silence covered the valley. Even the wind disappeared. Alya stood in the middle of the freezing river holding Rowan close while staring directly into those glowing golden eyes. She expected rage. She expected death. Instead she saw something impossible. Recognition. The beast lowered its massive head as though seeing someone it had searched for across countless years. Then with calm steady steps it placed one enormous paw into the sacred river. The captain staggered backward. Whoa. That cannot happen. Another step. Then another. The icy water flowed around the creature's powerful legs, yet nothing stopped it. The ancient enchantment that had protected the river for generations did nothing at all. The legendary guardian continued crossing until it stood only a few steps from Alya. Rowan buried his face against her shoulder, trembling with fear. Alya gently tightened her arms around him but never looked away from the beast. The giant wolf slowly lowered its head before her. Not in attack. Not in warning. But in quiet respect. The entire village stood frozen in complete disbelief. The oldest legend in the kingdom had just been broken before their eyes. Far beyond the river, inside a mountain fortress, hidden beneath towering cliffs, a lone man stood beside a palace window looking toward the distant northern sky. King Kaelen had ruled through years of war, betrayal, and endless sacrifice. Nothing surprised him anymore. Until his oldest messenger burst into the royal chamber breathless and pale. "My king, the sacred guardian, has crossed the Blackwater River." Kaelen slowly turned. For the first time in many years something like shock appeared in his cold gray eyes. Only one person could make the guardian cross. And according to every prophecy, that person was never supposed to exist. The news spread across the frozen valley faster than the winter wind. No messenger was needed, because every person who had witnessed the impossible carried the same stunned expression. The sacred guardian that had protected the Alpha King's bloodline for centuries was no longer standing beside the forbidden river. It was quietly walking behind a woman the world had forgotten. Alya did not understand why the enormous beast refused to leave her side. Every time she slowed her pace, it slowed as well. Every time she looked over her shoulder, those glowing golden eyes calmly met hers. There was no hunger inside them, there was no anger, only a strange patience that made her heart beat faster. Rowan held tightly to her hand. His small face was pale from fear, but with every passing moment, he found himself looking less at the terrifying beast and more at Alya. "Are we going to die?" he asked softly. Alya looked down at the frightened boy and gently brushed the snow from his hair. "Not while I am with you." The child nodded, as though those simple words carried more warmth than the thickest winter blanket. Behind them, the royal scouts slowly recovered from their shock. None of them dared point a weapon toward the guardian anymore. Even the captain, who had spoken with such confidence beside the river, now kept a respectful distance. He walked carefully toward Alya without taking his eyes off the giant wolf. "I have served the Northern Kingdom for 20 years, he said quietly. "I have heard every legend ever told about this creature. None of them prepared me for what I witnessed tonight." Alya remained silent. The captain lowered his voice. "Whatever you are, whatever secret follows you, the king must see it with his own eyes." Before Alya could answer, another sound echoed through the snowy forest. The shadow creatures had returned. This time they did not attack. They gathered beneath the trees, watching from the darkness, as though waiting for permission to move. The enormous guardian lifted its head. A low growl rolled across the valley. It was not loud. Yet every shadow creature immediately stepped backward. One by one they disappeared into the forest until nothing remained except the whispering wind. The captain stared in disbelief. "They obey it." No one answered because the truth had already become impossible to deny. The Guardian was not merely stronger than the shadows. It ruled over them. As dawn slowly painted the eastern sky with soft silver light, the group began the long journey toward the mountain kingdom. Snow covered the ancient road while frozen cliffs rose higher with every passing mile. The villagers watched from a distance. Some still feared Alya. Others looked at her with something entirely new. Oh! An old woman stepped forward carrying a small woven scarf. Without saying a word, she wrapped it gently around Rowan's shoulders before quietly returning to the crowd. It was the first act of kindness Alya had witnessed from the village in many years. She watched them disappear behind the falling snow and realized she felt no anger toward them anymore. Only sadness. The road grew steeper as they entered the northern mountains. Towering pine trees stretched toward the gray sky while frozen waterfalls shimmered like crystal walls. The journey remained silent until Rowan suddenly stopped walking. The little boy slowly turned toward the Guardian. "Are you really a monster?" he asked with innocent curiosity. The great beast simply looked at him. Then something unexpected happened. It lowered its massive body onto the snow until its head rested almost level with the child. Rowan hesitated only for a moment before carefully reaching out. His tiny hand touched the thick silver-black fur. It felt warm despite the freezing air. The Guardian closed its eyes peacefully. A small smile appeared on Rowan's face. "You are lonely too, aren't you?" Alya watched the moment in complete silence. For the first time she realized that beneath all its terrifying strength, the creature carried an endless sadness. Almost as if it had spent centuries waiting for someone who never came. Far away inside the towering stone walls of the royal fortress, King Kaelen stood alone within the Hall of Ancestors. Ancient banners hung from the high ceiling while enormous statues of former rulers watched over the chamber. His closest advisor, Lord Malric, entered quietly before bowing. "The scouts have confirmed the reports," he said. The Guardian crossed the Blackwater River. Kaelen did not move. "And the woman? She lives in a forgotten border village. Her name is Alya. No noble records. No family history beyond the disappearance of her parents many years ago." Malric carefully studied the king's face. "Shall I order her arrested when she arrives?" Kaelen slowly turned. His gray eyes remained calm, but something deeper moved beneath them. "Well, bring her here unharmed. I want every answer hidden inside those old legends." Malric lowered his head. "As you command, my king." Yet as he walked away, a shadow of concern crossed his face. Deep inside the secret chambers beneath the castle, an ancient locked door rested untouched for decades. Behind that door lay truths that were never meant to be uncovered. And for the first time in many years, Lord Malric feared that those secrets were beginning to awaken, along with a mysterious young woman walking steadily toward the kingdom beside the Guardian that had finally chosen to follow someone other than its king. The mountain road stretched endlessly beneath a sky covered with heavy gray clouds. Fresh snow drifted across the narrow path, while towering cliffs stood on both sides like silent guardians watching every traveler who dared enter the northern kingdom. The journey had become quieter with every passing hour. Even the royal scouts, who normally filled long marches with conversation, now spoke only in whispers. The enormous Guardian walked behind Alya with calm and steady steps. Its golden eyes never wandered far from her, as though every movement she made carried meaning only it could understand. Whenever Rowan stumbled through the deep snow, the beast slowed without command, allowing the little boy enough time to catch his breath. Rowan glanced up at Alya with tired eyes. "Do you think the king is kind?" Alya smiled gently, though she carried no answer. "I do not know. People often become stories before they remain people. Perhaps we should meet him before we decide who he truly is." The little boy nodded thoughtfully and continued walking while holding tightly to the warm scarf wrapped around his shoulders. Hours later, the frozen forest slowly began to disappear behind the falling snow. Enormous stone walls rose into view, built against the side of the mountain. The fortress looked less like a castle and more like part of the cliffs themselves. Massive towers reached toward the dark sky, while hundreds of banners carrying the silver wolf crest fluttered in the cold wind. The captain finally broke the long silence. "Welcome to Frostkeep, the heart of the northern kingdom." Alya lifted her eyes toward the fortress. She had never imagined a place so large could exist. Stone bridges connected towering walls, high watchtowers overlooked endless valleys, beyond them snowy peaks disappeared into the clouds. As the gates slowly opened, the sound echoed across the mountains. Soldiers lined both sides of the entrance, their polished armor reflected the pale winter light, yet none of them looked at the royal scouts. Every pair of eyes rested on Alya, or the guardian walking behind her. The whispers began immediately. It crossed the river. That is the woman. The prophecy cannot be true. Others remained completely silent, unable to understand what they were seeing. The guardian ignored every stare, every frightened face, every lowered spear. Followed only Alya. Inside the fortress, servants stopped working, blacksmiths lowered their hammers, stable boys forgot the horses they were feeding, even experienced warriors stepped aside without being ordered. An old priest standing near the central courtyard slowly dropped the wooden prayer beads from his hands. His trembling voice barely escaped his lips. After all these years, the waiting is over. Far above the courtyard inside the royal hall, King Kaelen stood before a large window carved into ancient stone. The first snowflakes of the afternoon drifted through the air beyond the glass. His expression remained calm, but his sharp gray eyes followed every movement below. He finally saw her. She looked nothing like the dangerous figure described in forgotten legends. She appeared exhausted, cold, protective of the frightened child walking beside her. Yet somehow she carried a quiet strength that did not ask for attention. His gaze shifted toward the guardian. For years that legendary creature had stood beside his throne, obeying no one except the ancient laws of the kingdom. Now it walked behind a stranger. Kaelen quietly spoke without taking his eyes away from the courtyard. "Open the hall. Bring her to me." Within minutes the great wooden doors slowly opened. Alya entered with Rowan beside her, while the guardian remained just outside the entrance watching everything with silent patience. The royal hall felt enormous. Thick stone pillars rose toward a ceiling lost in shadow. Ancient banners hung between burning torches whose warm light danced across polished floors. At the far end of the chamber stood King Kaelen, tall, strong, calm. His dark cloak rested over silver armor marked by countless battles. Though young compared with many rulers, his face carried the quiet weight of responsibility rather than pride. For several long moments neither of them spoke. Kaelen stepped forward first. "You crossed the Blackwater River." Alya met his eyes without lowering her own. "Yes. And your guardian crossed after me." His gaze remained steady. "Were you afraid?" She answered honestly. "I was. But the child needed me more than I feared the river." Kaelen looked toward Rowan, whose small hand still clung tightly to Alya. The king knelt until he stood at the boy's eye level. "What is your name?" Rowan answered softly. "Rowan, my king." Kaelen offered the child a reassuring smile rarely seen by anyone inside the castle. "You are safe here. No one will harm you." The little boy slowly relaxed. Watching the exchange, Alya felt something unexpected. The man before her was nothing like the cruel ruler described in border villages. Before another word could be spoken, the enormous guardian quietly entered the royal hall. Gasps echoed from every noble gathered inside. The beast ignored the throne completely. It walked past the king, past every guard, past every noble, then calmly settled beside Alya, placing its massive body between her and everyone else in the room. Silence filled the chamber. Lord Malric stood among the royal council, watching the scene with careful eyes. Although his face remained respectful, his hands tightened inside his sleeves. This was happening exactly as the oldest forbidden records had warned. Kaelen slowly looked at the guardian, then back toward Alya. His voice became quieter. "It has never chosen anyone before. Not even me." Before Alya could answer, a strange warmth suddenly spread through her hands. She looked down. Faint silver lines had begun glowing beneath the skin of her wrist, like tiny streams of moonlight flowing through her veins. The light lasted only a heartbeat before disappearing. No one seemed to notice. Except Lord Malric. For the first time in decades, genuine fear entered his eyes because he recognized the mark immediately. The bloodline he believed had been erased forever had finally returned to the kingdom, and with it every secret buried beneath the ancient stones of Frost Keep was beginning to awaken once again. Morning arrived over Frost Keep beneath a sky washed in pale silver light. The fortress slowly awakened as bells echoed across the mountain walls. Servants hurried through long stone corridors. Soldiers changed the night watch, and smoke rose from hundreds of chimneys into the freezing air. Yet beneath the ordinary rhythm of the castle something had changed. Everyone had seen the impossible with their own eyes, and no conversation escaped the same question. Who was the young woman the sacred guardian had chosen? Alya stood beside the narrow window of the chamber, prepared for her. Snowflakes drifted gently beyond the glass while distant mountain peaks disappeared beneath soft clouds. She had never slept in a room this warm or this quiet, yet peace refused to enter her heart. Her thoughts returned again and again to the strange silver light that had appeared beneath her skin. She slowly rolled back the sleeve covering her wrist. Nothing remained. The glowing lines had vanished completely. Perhaps she had imagined them. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she said. The heavy wooden door opened and Rowan stepped inside carrying a small loaf of warm bread almost as large as his arms. His face brightened the moment he saw her. "The kitchen lady said this belongs to us." She smiled for the first time since entering the castle. "Then we should thank her later." The little boy happily broke the bread into 2 uneven pieces, giving Alya the larger one without hesitation. "You need more because you always protect me." Her eyes softened. No one had shown her such simple kindness in many years. Before either of them could speak again, another knock echoed through the room. This time it was Captain Darius. His expression remained respectful but serious. "His Majesty requests your presence after the morning council." Alya quietly nodded. "Is something wrong?" Darius hesitated before answering. "Many people have questions. Some believe you fulfilled an ancient prophecy. Others fear that your arrival may bring war. The king wishes to hear your story before deciding anything further." After he left, Rowan looked nervously toward Alya. "Will they send us away?" She gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "Whatever happens, we will face it together." Those words eased the fear in the boy's eyes. Meanwhile, deep beneath the castle, Lord Malric descended a narrow staircase lit only by flickering torches. Hidden behind layers of stone rested a forgotten chamber that few people even knew existed. Dust-covered ancient shelves filled with faded scrolls and cracked leather books untouched for decades. Malric carefully removed one old manuscript wrapped inside black cloth. His hands trembled as he opened its brittle pages. An illustration covered the first sheet. A young woman stood beside the great guardian while silver markings glowed across both of her arms. The drawing looked painfully familiar. Exactly like the woman now sleeping inside Frost Keep. Malric closed the book immediately. His calm mask finally cracked. "She cannot be alive," he whispered. "That bloodline ended long ago. It had to end." He quickly locked the manuscript away before climbing back toward the surface. No one could discover what those forgotten records contained. Not the king. Not Alya. Not anyone. High above inside the royal council chamber, King Kaelen listened as generals discussed growing unrest along the eastern border. Reports spoke of abandoned villages, missing travelers, and strange creatures appearing beneath the cover of darkness. General Oryx stepped forward. "My king, our border patrols have found more of the shadow creatures. They avoid direct battle. They seem to be searching for something." Kaelen remained thoughtful. "Or someone." The room fell silent. Lord Malric entered just then carrying his usual calm expression. "Your Majesty, perhaps these attacks began long before the young woman arrived. Coincidences often appear larger than they truly are." Kaelen slowly looked toward him. "Do you believe in coincidence, Lord Malric?" The older man smiled politely. "I believe fear often creates patterns where none exist." The king said nothing more, but the answer lingered in his mind. Soon Alya entered the chamber accompanied by Captain Darius. Rowan remained outside with several castle servants who happily distracted him with warm food and carved wooden toys. The nobles watched Alya carefully. Some with curiosity. Others with open suspicion. Kaelen invited her closer. "Tell me about your parents." The question caught her completely by surprise. She lowered her eyes for a moment, searching memories that had faded with time. "I remember very little. Only my mother singing during winter nights. My father carrying me through the forest. Then one morning they were simply gone. The villagers said they disappeared. No one ever searched for them. Kaelen studied every word she spoke. Did they ever tell you where your family came from? She slowly shook her head. Only that we should never fear the river. Several members of the council exchanged uneasy glances. Lord Malric remained perfectly still though his heartbeat quickened. Kaelen noticed the reaction but continued calmly. There may be answers hidden inside our oldest records. If you are willing, I would like our royal historians to help uncover the truth. Alya nodded. I have spent my whole life wondering who I really am. If those answers exist, then I want to find them. As the meeting ended, a cold breeze suddenly swept through the chamber even though every window remained closed. The torches flickered violently. Outside, the Great Guardian lifted its head toward the northern mountains. A deep warning growl rolled across the castle grounds. Soldiers rushed onto the walls. Far beyond the fortress, dozens of dark figures stood motionless along the snowy ridges, watching Frost Keep from a distance. They did not advance. They simply waited. Hidden among them stood a cloaked stranger whose face remained concealed beneath a black hood. The stranger quietly smiled while staring directly toward the castle. The Guardian has finally found her. Everything is beginning exactly as it was foretold. Then the mysterious figure disappeared into the blowing snow, leaving only silence behind, while unseen danger slowly closed its grip around Frost Keep and everyone living inside its ancient walls. The warning growl of the sacred guardian echoed across every tower of Frost Keep until even the oldest stones seemed to tremble beneath its power. Archers hurried onto the walls while soldiers tightened their grips around their spears. Every eye searched the white mountains where the dark figures had appeared only moments before. Yet when the first patrol reached the northern watchtower, the snowy ridge stood empty. Nothing remained except countless footprints disappearing into the endless forest. Captain Darius knelt beside one of the tracks. His face grew serious as he brushed away the fresh snow covering its edges. These are not the footprints of wolves, he said quietly. Nor are they made by ordinary men. King Kaelen stood beside him, looking toward the silent wilderness. They wanted us to see them. They are sending a message. No one argued because everyone understood the truth. Something powerful had begun moving against the kingdom. Far below inside the castle, Rowan stood beside one of the tall windows, watching the soldiers rushing across the courtyard. He looked toward Alya with worried eyes. Are those monsters coming here? Alya gently placed a comforting hand upon his shoulder. Not today. The walls of this castle have protected people for many generations. The little boy nodded, but his fear refused to disappear completely. At that same moment, the enormous guardian quietly entered the courtyard. Every frightened horse immediately became calm as it walked past, while nervous soldiers instinctively stepped aside. The creature lifted its nose toward the cold wind. Its golden eyes slowly turned toward the oldest section of the castle. Not toward the mountains. Not toward the gates. Toward the forgotten eastern wing that had remained abandoned for decades. Without hesitation, it began walking. Alya noticed immediately. It is searching for something, she whispered. King Kaelen heard her words and silently followed behind the guardian. Captain Darius ordered several guards to accompany them while Lord Malric watched from a distant balcony. His expression changed the moment he realized exactly where the guardian was going. No, he whispered beneath his breath. Not there. The group entered a narrow stone passage where thick layers of dust covered the floor. No servant had cleaned these halls in years. Torn banners hung from cracked walls, while broken windows allowed freezing air to flow through the empty corridors. Rowan held tightly onto Alya's hand. This place feels sad, he whispered. Kaelen looked around thoughtfully. When I was a child, this entire wing was closed. No one ever explained why. The guardian continued forward, as though it already knew every corner of the forgotten halls. Finally it stopped before an enormous wooden door reinforced with ancient iron bands. The creature lowered its massive head, then gently touched the center of the door with its nose. Nothing happened. Then the silver markings beneath Alya's wrists suddenly returned. Soft glowing lines slowly spread across her skin, brighter than before. Everyone stared in complete silence. Alya stepped closer without understanding why her body seemed to move on its own. The warmth inside her hands became stronger with every step. She slowly raised her glowing palm and placed it against the old wood. A deep sound echoed through the corridor. The ancient lock released itself. The heavy doors slowly opened. Cold air rushed from the darkness beyond, carrying the scent of old parchment and forgotten memories. Torches were quickly brought inside. Their light revealed an enormous hidden library untouched for countless years. Shelves reached toward the ceiling, filled with weathered books, ancient scrolls, and carved stone tablets. Beautiful paintings covered the walls. Kings, queens, great battles. Silver wolves standing proudly beside crowned rulers. Then Alya's eyes stopped upon one particular portrait. A young queen wearing white robes stood beside the same sacred guardian. Her face looked almost identical to Alya's own. Only her eyes appeared older, carrying the wisdom of someone who had ruled through both joy and sorrow. Rowan slowly looked from the painting to Alya. "She looks just like you." No one answered. Even Kaelen struggled to find words. Captain Darius quietly stepped backward in disbelief. Lord Malric entered the library several moments later. The color immediately disappeared from his face. He had spent years making certain this chamber remained forgotten. Now every secret hidden inside was standing beneath the light once again. Kaelen turned toward him. "Did you know this place existed?" Malric hesitated only briefly. "Very little, Your Majesty. Old stories speak of abandoned royal records, but I believe them destroyed long ago." The king's sharp eyes rested upon him for another moment. Something inside his trusted advisor no longer felt entirely familiar. Before he could question further, another discovery caught everyone's attention. At the center of the library rested a circular stone table. Upon it lay a single crystal surrounded by ancient silver symbols. As Alya approached, the crystal began glowing with soft moonlit light. The guardian quietly lowered itself beside her exactly as it had before the river. The room suddenly became filled with gentle warmth despite the winter cold surrounding the castle. Then faint voices echoed through the chamber. Not frightening voices, peaceful ones, almost like distant memories carried across time. Alya closed her eyes. For one brief moment she saw flashes of another life. A smiling woman placing a silver crown upon her head. A strong man lifting her into his arms. A palace burning beneath a blood-red sky. A baby wrapped in white cloth carried through a snowstorm. Then everything vanished. Alya opened her eyes with tears quietly resting upon her cheeks. "I have seen this place before," she whispered. "But I have never been here." King Kaelen stepped closer. "Perhaps your memories are finally finding their way back to you." Before Alya could answer, the crystal suddenly dimmed. The peaceful warmth disappeared. Outside, a loud horn blasted from the castle walls. A frightened guard came running through the corridor, struggling to catch his breath. "Your Majesty." More riders have appeared beyond the northern pass. This time they are carrying black banners. And they are demanding that the woman chosen by the guardian be surrendered before sunrise. The sound of the warning horn rolled through frost keep again and again until every tower answered with its own deep echo. Snow drifted across the battlements while hundreds of soldiers rushed into position, carrying shields, bows, and long spears. The peaceful silence that had covered the castle only moments before disappeared beneath the heavy footsteps of warriors preparing for a battle that no one had expected to arrive so quickly. King Kaelen stepped onto the highest wall overlooking the northern pass. The freezing wind pulled at his dark cloak as his sharp eyes searched the white valley below. Far in the distance, dozens of riders waited without moving. Their black banners rose above them like dark shadows against the snow. Each horse stood perfectly still, as though even the animals understood the seriousness of the moment. At the center of the riders stood a tall figure wearing a long black cloak. His face remained hidden beneath a hood, yet there was something strangely familiar about the calm confidence in the way he sat upon his horse. Captain Darius handed the king a bronze viewing glass. "They have not advanced, Your Majesty. They are simply waiting." Kaelen lowered the glass after a long moment. "That means they believe they already hold the advantage." Behind him, Alya quietly climbed the stone stairs leading onto the wall. Rowan remained safely inside the castle with several trusted servants, although he had begged to stay beside her. The enormous guardian followed Alya. As always, its heavy footsteps echoed softly across the frozen stones while nervous soldiers instinctively stepped aside. As soon as the hooded stranger below noticed Alya standing beside the king, he slowly raised one hand. A single rider broke away from the group carrying a white cloth instead of a weapon. The messenger stopped several yards from the castle gate. His voice echoed clearly across the silent valley. Our master brings only one demand. Surrender the woman chosen by the guardian before sunrise. Do this and your people will live. Refuse and every stone of this kingdom will be buried beneath snow and blood. The messenger waited calmly for an answer. Whispers spread among the soldiers. Some looked toward Alya with sympathy, others with fear. Kaelen stepped forward until everyone upon the walls could hear him. Tell your master that no innocent person will ever be traded for peace while I still wear this crown. The messenger smiled beneath his hood. Then he turned his horse without another word and rode back toward the waiting army. A heavy silence settled over the walls after his departure. Captain Darius spoke first. They expected us to refuse. Kaelen nodded. Because this was never about negotiation. It is about forcing us into fear. Alya remained quietly watching the distant riders. Something deep inside her heart stirred as she looked toward the mysterious leader. She could not explain it. She had never seen him before. Yet a strange feeling whispered that somehow their paths had crossed long ago. Far below inside the castle, Rowan wandered through one of the quiet gardens surrounded by snow-covered trees. One small white bird landed beside him, pecking gently at the frozen ground. The little boy smiled for the first time that day. Hello, little friend. The bird suddenly flew upward as though frightened by something unseen. Rowan turned around. Standing only a few steps away was an elderly woman wrapped in a gray cloak. Her face carried countless wrinkles, yet her bright blue eyes held surprising warmth. You must be Rowan, she said softly. The child nodded. Do I know you? The woman smiled. Well, but I knew someone who once smiled exactly like you. She reached into her cloak and removed a small silver pendant shaped like a crescent moon. This belonged to someone who loved the kingdom more than her own life. I believe it belongs with you now. Before Rowan could ask another question, the woman quietly walked away, disappearing among the falling snow as though she had never been there at all. Meanwhile, inside the hidden library, King Kaelen ordered the oldest royal scholars to examine every ancient scroll they could find. Hours passed as candles burned lower and stacks of forgotten books covered the great stone table. One elderly historian suddenly stopped turning the fragile pages before him. His hands began trembling. Your Majesty, I believe I have found something. Everyone gathered around. The old man carefully read the faded words aloud. When the guardian crosses the sacred river, it does not follow a ruler. It follows the heart that carries the forgotten light. That heart alone shall awaken the sleeping crown and reveal the hidden path beneath Frost Keep. Silence filled the library. Kaelen slowly looked toward Alya. The hidden path. What does that mean? The historian gently shook his head. The remaining pages are missing. Someone removed them many years ago. Across the room, Lord Malric quietly lowered his eyes. Only he knew exactly who had torn those pages from the ancient book. And only he knew what terrible truth they had contained. As night slowly covered the mountains, another storm began gathering above the kingdom. Lightning flashed behind distant clouds while icy wind howled across the cliffs. The hooded leader watched the castle from his camp below. A young warrior approached and bowed respectfully. My lord, shall we attack before dawn? The mysterious man slowly removed one black glove, revealing an old silver ring marked with the same royal crest carved throughout Frost Keep. His cold smile widened. Not yet. Let them uncover one more secret. Hope makes people far easier to break than fear ever could. Above them, thunder rolled across the mountains, while inside the ancient castle, Alya stood beside the window looking toward the storm. Without realizing it, she gently placed her hand over her heart. Beneath her skin the silver markings quietly returned. This time they spread farther than ever before glowing softly beneath the moonlight, as though something ancient had finally begun to awaken within her soul. The storm arrived before midnight, wrapping frost deep beneath a sky so dark that even the snow seemed to lose its color. Fierce winds swept across the mountain cliffs, sending icy clouds through every tower and narrow passage. Torch flames bent beneath the force of the cold air, while the sound of distant thunder rolled across the frozen kingdom like the footsteps of an ancient giant awakening from a long-forgotten sleep. Alya stood alone upon one of the eastern balconies, watching the valley below. The campfires of the enemy army glowed like scattered embers across the snow. Thousands of tiny lights stretched farther than she could count. She had never imagined that so many lives could gather for one purpose: find her. The silver markings beneath her skin glowed faintly beneath her sleeves. Their warmth had become stronger with every passing hour, no longer appearing for only a few moments. They now pulsed gently with every heartbeat. Behind her the familiar sound of heavy footsteps echoed across the stone floor. The sacred guardian approached without making a sound despite its enormous size. It stopped beside her and quietly looked toward the enemy camp. Alya gently rested her hand upon its thick silver-black fur. "Why did you choose me?" she whispered. The guardian closed its eyes but gave no answer. Yet somehow its silent presence brought more comfort than words ever could. At sunrise, King Kaelen summoned his commanders to the war chamber. A great map of the northern kingdom covered the center of the room. Small carved figures marked every fortress, village, and mountain pass. Captain Darius pointed toward the northern valley. "Their numbers continue growing. Scouts report warriors arriving from kingdoms that have been enemies for generations. Someone has united them." Kaelen folded his arms while studying the map. "That should not be possible. Those kingdoms have fought each other for decades." Lord Malric stepped forward with his usual calm voice. "Perhaps fear has accomplished what politics never could. If they truly believe the old prophecies, then they may consider this their final opportunity." Kaelen remained silent for several moments. Then he looked directly at Alya. "Every army outside these walls believes you possess something powerful. Do you remember anything else from the visions?" Alya lowered her eyes. "Only pieces. A burning palace. A woman wearing a silver crown. Someone carrying a child through the snow. Every memory feels close enough to touch but disappears before I understand it." The room fell quiet. Then Rowan suddenly entered, carrying the small silver pendant the mysterious old woman had given him. "I think this belongs to you," he said as he handed it toward Alya. The moment her fingers touched the pendant, a wave of brilliant silver light filled the chamber. Everyone stepped backward. The pendant began shining like captured moonlight. Ancient symbols slowly appeared across its surface, symbols that had remained hidden for countless years. The guardian immediately lowered its head. "Not from weakness, from respect." The old royal historian stared with wide eyes. "That seal. I have only seen it in the oldest records. It belongs to the House of Lunara, the first royal family that ruled these mountains before history was rewritten." Alya felt another vision crash into her mind. This time it was stronger than ever. She saw a great throne room filled with silver banners. A beautiful queen smiled as she placed the very same pendant around the neck of a little girl. Then flames burst through the palace windows. Soldiers wearing black armor stormed the hall. A trusted noble opened the castle gates from within. The queen handed the crying child to a loyal guardian. "Protect her, no matter what it costs." The vision ended as suddenly as it began. Alya stumbled, but Kaelen caught her before she fell. Her breathing became uneven. "Someone betrayed them," she whispered. "The palace did not fall because of an enemy. Someone inside opened the gates." Lord Malric quietly turned away before anyone noticed the sudden tension in his face. The memory struck far too close to truths he had spent years burying. Later that afternoon, Kaelen walked with Alya through the ancient gardens hidden inside the castle walls. Snow rested gently upon frozen flowers, while crystal ice covered the small fountain at the center. For the first time since her arrival, neither of them spoke about war, prophecy, or hidden bloodlines. Kaelen finally broke the silence. "When I became king, I believed strength meant carrying every burden alone. Now I am no longer certain. Alya looked toward him. You have carried your kingdom for many years. Even the strongest hearts grow tired. He smiled faintly. You speak as though you have known loneliness all your life. She answered with quiet honesty. But somehow it feels lighter here. Not because the danger is gone. Because I no longer face it alone. Their eyes met. For a brief moment the cold world around them seemed to disappear. Neither of them noticed Rowan watching from the castle window with a happy smile. The little boy whispered softly to himself. She makes him smile. I have never seen him smile before. As evening approached, the peace ended once again. A wounded scout arrived through the southern gate, barely able to remain on his horse. His clothes were torn and stained with blood. Captain Darius rushed forward to catch him before he collapsed. The scout struggled to speak. There is another army. Not from the north. From the eastern forests. They are moving toward Frost Keep. Before losing consciousness, he whispered one final sentence. They already know about the hidden library. Inside the great hall, every face turned toward Lord Malric. Only for a single heartbeat. But it was enough. Kaelen noticed something he had never seen before. Not fear of the enemy. Fear that a secret had escaped beyond the walls of his own castle. And for the first time since becoming king, a quiet question entered his heart. Perhaps the greatest danger had never been outside Frost Keep at all. The question refused to leave King Kaelen's mind long after the wounded scout had been carried to the healer's chamber. The great hall slowly emptied as commanders hurried to strengthen the castle defenses, while servants rushed through the corridors carrying supplies for the soldiers preparing for a siege. Yet Kaelen remained standing in silence, staring into the flames dancing inside the enormous stone fireplace. Someone inside Frost Keep had revealed the existence of the hidden library. That knowledge had been buried for generations. Only a handful of people had entered that forgotten chamber. The thought settled heavily upon him. The enemy was not simply surrounding the kingdom. It was already hiding within it. Outside, the first snow of the evening began falling once more, covering the castle walls in a quiet blanket of white. The sacred guardian stood upon the highest tower facing the northern mountains. Its golden eyes remained fixed upon the distant enemy camps without blinking, as though it sensed movements invisible to everyone else. Alya climbed the narrow staircase leading toward the tower. She found the guardian standing perfectly still against the cold wind. For several moments she simply stood beside it. The silence between them felt strangely peaceful. Then she quietly spoke. You already know what is coming, don't you? The great creature slowly turned its head toward her. Its calm eyes reflected the falling snow. Then it gently pressed its forehead against her shoulder. The moment they touched, another vision flooded Alya's mind. She saw an underground passage hidden beneath Frost Keep. Dark, cloaked figures carrying burning torches. A heavy iron gate opening from the inside. Then one familiar face appeared only for a heartbeat. She gasped and pulled away. The vision vanished immediately. Her breathing became uneven. She had almost recognized someone. Almost. Before the memory could become clear, hurried footsteps echoed behind her. Captain Darius approached with visible concern. My lady, the king requests you at once. The council has gathered again. Inside the war chamber, tension filled every corner of the room. Fresh reports covered the great wooden table, showing enemy movements from every direction. General Oryx spoke first. The northern army remains in place. The eastern force continues advancing. If they join together, we will be surrounded within 2 days. Kaelen listened carefully before looking toward Alya. Tell us exactly what you saw. She closed her eyes, trying to gather the fading pieces of her vision. There is another entrance beneath the castle. Someone opened it from inside. I could not see everything. But I know the danger is already closer than we believe. Several officers exchanged uneasy glances. Lord Malric folded his hands calmly. Visions are uncertain, Your Majesty. We should not risk the kingdom based upon dreams. For the first time, Kaelen did not immediately agree with his oldest advisor. Instead, he turned toward Captain Darius. Double the guards beneath the eastern wing. Search every passage beneath this fortress. No room remains locked. No corridor remains forgotten. Darius bowed without hesitation. "At once, my king." Lord Malric lowered his eyes, hiding the brief flash of alarm crossing his face. As the meeting ended, Rowan quietly wandered through the nearby corridor carrying a wooden wolf carved by one of the castle craftsmen. The child smiled while making soft growling sounds, pretending his toy protected the kingdom just like the Great Guardian. Without noticing, he followed a cold breeze drifting beneath an old stone archway. The corridor grew darker with every step. Soon the cheerful sounds of the castle disappeared behind him. He stopped before a cracked stone wall where faint whispers seemed to echo from somewhere beyond. Curiosity slowly replaced caution. He gently pushed against one loose stone. To his surprise, it shifted. A narrow opening appeared, revealing a hidden staircase leading downward into darkness. Rowan stared at it with wide eyes. Before he could call for anyone, a rough hand suddenly covered his mouth from behind. The wooden wolf fell onto the stone floor. Its sound echoed through the empty passage. Moments later, Alya stepped into the corridor searching for Rowan after noticing his absence. She immediately spotted the small carved wolf lying alone upon the ground. Her heart tightened. "Rowan," she called. No answer returned. Only silence. She slowly picked up the toy. Fresh footprints disappeared toward the hidden opening in the wall. At the very same moment, the sacred guardian released a thunderous roar that shook the entire castle. Soldiers froze. Horses panicked inside the stables. King Kaelen rushed into the corridor with Captain Darius, only to find Alya standing before the secret passage. Her face had turned pale. "Someone has taken him," she whispered. Kaelen's expression hardened instantly. "Seal every gate. No one leaves this castle." The king himself drew his sword. Not as a ruler giving orders from safety, but as a man preparing to walk directly into the darkness. The guardian stepped forward beside him, its glowing eyes fixed upon the hidden staircase. Then without fear it descended into the shadows. Kaelen followed. Alya close behind him, clutching Rowan's small wooden wolf tightly against her heart. Far below the ancient fortress, another pair of unseen eyes quietly watched their approach. A cold smile appeared beneath the darkness. The trap had finally been sprung. And for the first time since Alya crossed the Blackwater River, the true game had begun.